All right, guys, we'll probably have to start this up next season, but I want to sort of introduce this series now. We're going to call this the anti-power rankings. And the problem with the first power ranking series was I ended up taking it too seriously when it was meant to be a joke. It got big and took off, and then I started trying to review classes I really didn't have too much knowledge on. What I want to do here, since there are so many build guides out there and so many ways to gear these things and so many people reviewing them, and there's a few good tier lists out there, I want to talk about what you're going to run into with these classes. How hard are they to play, to gear, to deal with in the economy? Just what is the problem? And the rules are going to be pretty simple. If there is a massive underlying issue with the class, that is going to count for 1 point. If there is something that you desperately need to fix or gear or consider before playing it, that's going to be worth half a point. And then anything that is sort of a minor consideration, hey, keep this in mind if you're going to play this class, is going to be worth 0.25 points. So the higher the score on these anti-power rankings, the harder the class is to deal with in general. This will not be a gear or skill overview, though we will likely have to go over that very, very quickly. So we're going to start with the class that I am playing as my sort of Elizabeth Olsen for the end of the season here, which is the Whirlwind Assassin. And what I've had to do here, this is going to be an interesting one because I absolutely love this class, but I know it is going to score high. So let me get on some pre-buff gear here. And we'll start going over, as you can expect, what will probably be number one here to consider is pre-buffing. So on this class, you are using your Venom and its synergy Cobra Strike to add a bunch of damage to your Whirlwind. And you can get up, I don't have perfect gear here. I don't have perfect facets. I don't have a perfect buff helm. I don't have one to skills here. I don't have a perfect bramble. Everything else is actually there. Well, even these Venom grips are not perfect because I got faster block rate and I needed that. You can get your Venom easily up to about 11k. And my charms are not perfect either. And it counts twice. It applies on your weapons and when you hit. So every bit of damage helps. Even just 2 from skills from the Shadow Dancers, you can see 7,000. That's worth 500 damage, so it's effectively 1,000. And when you have the Pierce on, that's all the better, right? But every time you want to play this, you can do it without pre-buffing. But it's not as good. You have to come in and do this every single map you run. And I'm not even gonna lie, that is incredibly annoying. Someone I think even commented, hey, I love this class, but man, the pre-buffing is what kills me, because you gotta do this every time. The good news is, once you get it geared up enough, you will have enough damage and enough run walk that you really don't need to pre-buff after this. And if you do, it's really quick to get the map finished off. The only maps I have to really do the full pre-buff thing on twice is Cows and Ashen Plains. Those will still take you about 15 minutes to clear, but Chaldeums, I just ran a Chaldeum in 5 minutes. It is incredibly quick once you have the damage up. In terms of gearing, so we're gonna also, it's a minor consideration, in my opinion, is you have to do that. It's no different than maybe summoning skeletons on a Summon Mancer or something, but it's something to think about. So we're gonna add 0.25 to this. In terms of gearing, if you're an experimenter, someone like me who likes to play with everything about the class, everything about the build, physical or poison, which one's better, this was a testing class. It really was. There's so many ways to do this, either burst of speed or fade. Do you want to run Venom and keep your Bramble on, or switch all of it off? And that was a pain in the ass. I'm not even gonna lie. That was finding the perfect balance of getting max PDR. I actually switched to a Chains of Honor. You see how expensive this got? And we'll go over why I'm using that and overcapped on res in a minute. But that's a full 1 for me. Just the gearing alone and experimenting, because you have to change things as you go. If you run into a Sur Rune and have the ability to make your Bramble, and you know you're going to need that Bramble, well, that might be your money for the week, right? You don't necessarily have the option of just having this Chains of Honor while you're gearing up. Maybe if you buy it outright. But you might be stuck running the poison build and all of a sudden you're lacking on res or PDR and you got to switch your gear around. So gearing this thing up slowly as a character you're actually building as opposed to buying, that was incredibly difficult. And I think that's worth a full point. So I think you do have to consider that when you're playing this. Beyond that, the next thing to consider, the overall cost of this to get it sort of to the point where it can do those 6-minute clears on maps is expensive. Look at the gear that I have rolling on this. 3-socket count, Crown of Ages. That is actually probably best in slot corruption for me, by the way, because you are suffering from attack rating on this pretty poorly. You do have to get Canopy Frozen on Amulet, but that's for everybody. I mean, the startup cost is only an ohm for the Chaos Claw, but you can see a Shadow Killer with 3 sockets is still going to be an Ist to a Gull, plus all the facets. You need 2 of them. You need to get your Bramble. There's 2.25 high runes right there. You got to find specific curse reduction items, like these Gores alone were worth 2 high runes, and that's because it's the end of the season. They're probably worth more during the peak of everything. You have to get very specialized gear, and the overall cost, a Chains of Honor, you got to dump some runes into this to really make it work. It's easy to start out because it's just the ohm. Tier 1s and 2s are fine, but once you start getting into those juicy maps, the cost alone, not just the replacement gear, which I think is the major consideration, but the overall cost once you've found how you want to play it is another 0.5 for me. So make sure you consider that. Next, let's talk about maps. This was weird because I know I'm a ranged player. I am a summons on guy. I like having my minions and I like attacking things myself. That's why I always end up going multi-shot summons. I've done it the last 3 seasons and ended up switching to it. But the weird thing for me was my brain just axes out bad mods on maps because the summons on does not need to deal with them. I don't think I have any rolled up. But if there's Deadly Strike on a map or extra elemental damage on the minions, my brain skips right over that stuff because I don't get hit on the summons on. It's not a problem. Aura packs and harpies, like when Wapnator and David are like, oh man, this map sucks, I don't even care because I can deal with anything on that. This does not. And any mod that has, first of all, everyone knows open wounds and poison and all that really hurts your merc. You really do need your merc for this build because at least I'm running the Vigor merc, but your mercenary just adds that extra something you need, whether it's the Blessed Aim from Act 2 or the Vigor from Act 1. It's necessary. So you have to watch out for those mods on your mercenary. But for you too, the 2 ways you can die is the buffed up maps with increased rarity. Aura packs are a problem on this. I know that's standard for Melee, but maybe I'm bad and haven't been dealing with it for a couple seasons. But holy lord, it is a coin flip when you're rolling into Mighted Fanaticism skeleton archers. You can't leech off them, and it's like, oh god, if you don't see them coming, you are almost dead instantly, running at least with 2 claws. You're better off with a shield, hardcore players, I know someone was asking about that, and it's not because the blocking is better. Your block chance is still pretty good with weapon block. It's the frames. The shield frames are just better. So I think that's the issue for me running this dual claw style. I'm going for the damage. I don't like glass cannons, and to run the dual claw style, I had to get max damage reduction, which will be there when I have all the gear on. And I had to overcap on res, which is why I'm using the Chains of Honor. So when you look at this, for example, which I have the gear on, my res is way overcapped, right? Because the other way that you die, like I said, all those maps that have the extra cold and fire damage on them is when you have a rare boss that has the Conviction Aura on. And you don't see it under you because you got blades, you're spinning, everything else, and all of a sudden you are negative 50 on res, even if you're curse immune, and there's 200% extra elemental damage on the map. Like, I don't die on the summons on, guys. I don't. I can count the number of times I've died on one hand on the summons on in the last 5 seasons. And most of those were completely my fault, or I wasn't doing something I was supposed to. This, I have died more times than I want to count. And it's just because I did not overcap on my res, didn't have max PDR, or was trying at like 30. It doesn't work. And that's something you do have to consider. I know we've gone all about this for a while, but that's another 0.5 for me. This is a class that has to get ramped up before you're really clearing those 300% tier 3 densities. Beyond that, considering charms, the 4% poisons are pretty in demand. Again, we went over cost already. That's nothing really special. But I think we've covered a decent bit here. How is it to play? What do you have to do to gear it up? What things do you have to consider? Do you want to pre-buff? And the testing alone with how many different mercenaries. I bought a Pride, sold a Pride, went to the Act 5 merc, went back to the Act 1 merc, finding how it works for you, because this is such a subjective build class is something you got to consider too. And I think that's everything. I mean, if there's anything else people want to know about this, go find a guide. One of my guides on it, Shug's guide on it, Calalex's guide on it. There's a bunch of Whirlwind showcase videos out there. But, oh, and last thing, Ubers. Another reason you want the Chains of Honor is for Ubers. Again, you really suffer when that res drops. This is just not, it's not Barbarian. You don't have the built-in res, you don't have the built-in PDR. Well, you do with Fade a little bit. But not to the same extent like Iron Skin. Iron Skin is overpowered too compared to Fade. Well, not really. I mean, Fade is god tier. But the point is, you just don't have that natural Barbarian tankiness of the Whirlwind builds. And if you're going to do Ubers on this, the Chains of Honor really, really helps for that Meth Conviction aura. So it can do Ubers, and that's another consideration. And maybe we should give, like, I don't know how I'm going to continue this series, but, you know, what can it do overall? I think we should maybe add some points at the end for what is the end game kind of like for it. You know, what is the what can it do? Like, I can knock summons on because it cannot do declone. It's not a declone class. This is something you could probably do declone on. I'm not sure if I've seen any Whirlwind decloners, but I know you can do Ubers on it incredibly easily. And if you have enough leech and enough pots, this could probably do declone too. So I think we should give 0.25 back to it because it has some versatility. It doesn't have to deal with immunes in endgame. It can do Ubers. It can do declone. I'll add up what that total score was, and you'll see it flash across the screen now. And there we go. And then we'll start up sort of a ranking on, hey, how much of a pain in the ass are these classes to play? The anti-power rankings. Hey, bub. I'm talking to the internets. All right, I'll play with you. See you guys later. And to do the YouTube thing, by the way, if you have something you think I missed, something we have to consider for an anti-power ranking. Remember, we're talking about how difficult these things are to play, gear, build. Let me know in the comments below. That'll help the algorithm. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, right? Am I doing this correctly? And we'll adjust these rankings as time goes on with sort of the community feedback on, hey, what is really difficult about these classes? So let me know, guys.